third edition of the ULAYO Festival. The LGBTQIA+ week is showcasing the life of the queer community in Maputo. The exhibition is spearheaded by Danish photographer Ditte Haarløv, who captures feelings, attitudes and peculiar traits of the community. Haarlov joins us now via video link. Haarlov, a very good morning to you and thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And good morning, everybody.
Thank you so much. Tell us about this exhibition, but also your story in relation to the individuals that you've taken pictures and visuals of.
So to begin with the last, my story is very long with the Manas, as they call themselves, the young LGBTQIA+ community that I have been working with for 24 years it is. So, well, it started when I was very young and had just taken my first course in photography at the photo school in Maputo. Maputo, which is also where I grew up as a child and a teenager, a daughter of cooperantes, as they called themselves, my parents. They were part of this wave of young Europeans, Danish in my case, that traveled to Mozambique just after independence to help the country, or for themselves also, to help themselves learn from the socialist African experiment. So that's my story. And of course, like starting from 24 years ago means also that my relationship with the Manas is a very deep one. We know each other for that time, and it's also a relationship that has witnessed a lot. Or one can say I have been the witness of the Manas, of the group growing starting from being only Ingracia and Antonietta, who dared to show themselves in the public space, because it was back then still a huge taboo to be queer, to be a trans person as they identified. And then to see how gradually this community has grown and has become more visible. And now there is an organization called Lambda for the community, for the queer community. And there is also the festival, the ULAYO, that I was so lucky that they invited me to show my work this year.
Yeah, and when you speak about the first time that you met Antoinette as well as Ingracia, you speak about they were blatantly homosexual. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, they dared to show who they were. I wouldn't say so much homosexual. Maybe it's something that I said many years ago. Today, the wordings we use are different. They showed themselves like in the street, walking around with, you know, dresses and hips swaying, and for that time in Maputo, being a trans person was really outrageous, and it was also very dangerous. So of course, like, since I had just taken my first course in photography and I was so, how can you say, I mean, I always knew I was a privileged person, having been born in Denmark and with my skin color, even though my parents were working for the Mozambican state and government, receiving the same money as everybody else. So we weren't financially privileged, but I knew I was treated different because of my skin color. So I always wanted to use that privilege to help the ones that were less privileged. One can say maybe that was a little bit naive, but that's how I was. I was only 23 years at the time when we met. So I wanted to give them a voice and to see them and to accept them and acknowledge that they existed, and to acknowledge their courage also, because, I mean, one could be put in jail for just being who one was back at the time.
Yeah. I'm going to show a picture now of a funeral. It seems as though it's a funeral that is taking place. Community members may have gathered at this particular funeral, of course, at a cemetery. Can you just explain to us what's happening here? What's the story behind this photograph?
Okay, so what has happened, of course, in the many years that I have been photographing 20+ is that many of the persons that I have photographed, many of the people belonging to the community of Manas, as they call themselves, sisters, which was the word that they chose to call themselves, since there was no other word in the Mozambican vocabulary back then describing being trans person, being queer. Many have died. A lot of people died. And many people that I cared for, these people were of my friends, obviously, of course. So for me, it's important to have this picture in the exhibition of the funeral to symbolize all the deaths, all the ones we lost along the way. So this picture is from 2011, but in the exhibition that I made in Maputo just recently, there was actually an altar to commemorate the manas, the sisters that have passed away. And where I wanted to go to with this is that in 2022, so it's not from this funeral, but in 22, Antonia was murdered, one of the sisters. So this picture I chose to sort of symbolize the fact that death is a very present factor in the life of the sisters. Of course, I have other pictures also from the morgue, for instance, of a body decomposing. But these are pictures I have chosen not to include in the exhibition and in the series because it will easily sort of push away people because it's simply too harsh, this reality. So that's why there's a picture of the funeral.
Yeah, and again, going back to that picture, I'm going to ask that we show that picture again. So it is happening at a cemetery, of course, it is a funeral. But that sense of community, so you have community members there that are gathered around whoever is being buried, right? And you'd have that person's family members there as well. What does it tell us about that particular community and their understanding of the manners?
The manners, what do you mean?
So speaking about the manners, sorry, it's the manners, my mispronunciation there. It is the manners. So what does this picture in a group of community members coming together tell us about the manners?
Yeah, there is community. I mean, there is community. I guess what you can say is the picture talks about the fact that the manners are there for each other because many have been pushed away from the families. Some are a little bit accepted, but at least not outwardly accepted. So there are various degrees of acceptance, but especially back then, when I first met the manas, they were so discriminated upon that they had to be each other's families, right? So there is, and even more so now, a community of manas standing up for each other. So, for example, when Antonia was murdered, the manas came together. And since I was also there, I came together and we paid for Antonia's body to be put in a cooler so the body wouldn't decompose immediately, for example. This is what the manas do for one another because Antonia didn't have family, or the family she had left had pushed her away after the parents died. So they are there for each other, the manas. They are each other's family because the surrounding society doesn't do so much.
Yeah. And then there's another picture of two people standing there. One looks a bit older with almost like a greyish shirt on, and the other one with a pair of jeans with a cigarette in their hand. Can you tell us about this picture? What's the story behind it?
Indeed, I can. So this is a portrait of Antonietta and Antonietta's father. So Antonietta was the first mana I met, along with Ingracia. They were the first to be out there, as I explained earlier. And Antonietta was a very amazing human being. I loved her a lot. And we were very close friends, despite being from such different positions, right? She had an extreme courage to be who she was back then, and she was also the only person who would work the street at night. She was a sex worker, and she had run away from her family home at the age of 13 because she already then knew what she was, and she had also run away from poverty. She had 13 siblings, and they lived like in a town, a village called Shinavane, which is 3 hours north of Maputo. So on New Year's Day, we went back to visit Antonietta's family in Shinavane because she also helped her family with the money she got from her work as a sex worker. So we went back to the family, and she would hand over the help that she brought, and we celebrated New Year's Eve there. And of course, this was sort of, now you see Antonietta wearing men's clothes or jeans because she was with the family, so she had to cumprir, you say in Portuguese. She had to comply with the rules of the family.
Yeah, it's almost like having to switch off your identity depending on the group and the social circle that you're in. But Ditte, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And well done on this exhibition and the work that you've been doing over the last few years. Ditte Haarløv Johnson is a photographer. Thank you so much for making time for us. So